Die grootste aftreefondse in Suid-Afrika vertrou hulle lede se aftreebeplanning toe aan Portfolium. SMS die woord rand na 37522 teen R1 en Portfolium skakel jou terug. Ons het verlede week met baie goeie nuus afgesluit en dit is dat die Finansiële Aksietaakmag of die FATF Suid-Afrika van sy sogenaamde gryslys verwyder het. Nou die liggaam is 'n internasionale waghond teen geldwasery en die finansiering van terreur en het in 2022 vir Suid-Afrika op die lys geplaas weens 22 wesenlike tekortkominge in Suid-Afrika se vermoë om geldwasery en die finansiering van terrorisme hok te slaan. Die tekortkominge het grootliks verband gehou met onvoldoende regulatoriese raamwerke en wetgewing om vinnig finansiële misdade te identifiseer en dan behoorlik strafregtelik te vervolg. Ismail Mamonia het op die lyn. Hy is 'n tegniese raadgewer tot die nasionale tesourie en hy was ook die hoof van die span wat Suid-Afrika van die gryslys moes afkry. Ismail, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations. I think you've done a sterling job. It must have been a long 2.5 years. How much sleep did you get?
Yes, it was a long 2.5 years. I did get enough sleep. That wasn't the problem. It took a bit longer than 2.5 because once we received the bad outlook in 2021 with the mutual evaluation, since then we've been sort of under pressure, obviously, to deal with the deficiencies in our anti-money laundering system. And I want to emphasize there was a whole team that worked very hard. So I want to certainly thank the team that helped us get us out of the grey list.
Tell us about this team. Who are they? How big were they? And maybe what was the biggest challenges the team faced to get us off the list?
So the team was an interdepartmental committee because when it comes to grey listing, it covered many issues. It covered investigations, prosecutions, use of financial intelligence, creation of beneficial ownership registries, financial and non-financial sector regulators, had the National Prosecuting Authority, it had the Hawks, the DPCI, it had the FIC, it had the SIU, it had the CIPC, it had the Master's Office, it had the Department of Justice, it had your Prudential Authority from the Reserve Bank and also the exchange control people from the Reserve Bank, as well as FSCA, SARS. You know, it was a massive team. Basically, I guess my job was how do you herd all these cats together?
Yeah, that must have been quite a challenge because I read some of the articles that were published in 2022 when we were placed on the list, and then everybody was very upset that we were put on the list in the first place, and there were commitments to get us off the list within 12 months, and now it's taken 2.5 years plus. So I think that's maybe just an indication of the complexity of the steps that needed to be taken to get us off the list.
No, absolutely. Look, we were all not just disappointed but humiliated that we got grey listed, and we were optimistic we'd do it quickly. But once you understand the FATF's review process, you realize that it would take us actually, when you had such complex issues like ours, at the FATF meeting last week, everybody congratulated us for the speed with which we got out of grey listing, because people expected us to be there much longer. Having said all of that, I do think that grey listing was good for the country because it basically reflected our institutional weaknesses at the time of the mutual evaluation, which is 2019 to 2021. And that's a direct effect of what I would say state capture, in the sense that state capture weakened our organizations like the Hawks and the NPA, and we were really starting off a very low base. And in 2019, when the mutual evaluation started, the new leadership at the NPA, at the Hawks, at SARS, they hadn't been there long enough to really reverse the effects of state capture. And I should add, it's still going to take us longer to fully reverse the effects of state capture, as you see with Eskom, Transnet, etc. So I think it's quite an achievement that we managed to do it in 2.5 years.
The changes that were made, or the interventions that got us off the list, mainly relate to legislative and regulatory reform. And the key now would be enforcement. You know, I've read on News 24 this morning this whole story of the capture of the Tembisa Hospital and some of the tenderpreneurs there buying 50 million rand cars. We see the killing of Babita Deokaran, who was a whistleblower. I don't know if you've read Jeff Wicks's book, but
no, I've read the book. I'm very interested in the what's happening around Tembisa Hospital, and what happened clearly was scandalous. So to answer your question, no, grey listing was about getting the legal framework right, which we managed to get right, and now, frankly, we are amongst the countries that are probably comply with the laws better than many countries, including, for example, the US. We rate much better than them. We now only non-compliant with 2 out of the 40 recommendations. The problem with us as South Africans is that we're lousy on implementation. And so we fail all 11 measures, and that's why we got grey listed. And so, yes, it is about implementation and enforcement. And yes, getting off the grey list, all it indicates is that we've begun to tackle our problems. That in 2019 to 2021, our system of implementation was almost non-existent after state capture. And now what it indicates is we've begun to develop it. We're certainly nowhere near where it should be. And the challenge is that we continue to strengthen that. So getting back to Tembisa Hospital, of course, the issue is this. It's 4 years on, and it takes us 4 years before we seize assets. Those guys who looted the procurement system have not been charged criminally. It's only the hitmen who are involved with Babita's killing who are in jail. So we have a mutual evaluation again next year, ending in 2027. And we're going to have to demonstrate that we continue to improve as we exit grey listing, because if we don't, we could well get back to being grey listed. So that's going to be the challenge that we face.
The question here from my side is, with these new interventions, the regulatory framework, the increased financial surveillance, prevent similar corruption and malfeasance to occur at a state or a private sector institution?
Rick, do you really need an answer? The answer is no. And I think if you look at it, corruption is very extensive and entrenched in our country, especially in the procurement system. And we're going to have to do a lot more to begin to reduce it, and then to stop it, and then to have in place stronger preventive controls so that it doesn't happen. And to the extent that it does happen, then we've got to be able to have enforcement acting very quickly. So no, not at all. And I think the worst lesson to learn from exiting the grey list is to think, it's all now well and good, and we comply, and we become complacent. We've got to strengthen our institutions still. And by the way, not to do it for FATA for the coming mutual evaluation, we have to do it for ourselves, for our country and our people, because corruption and financial crimes, have increased significantly, and much more needs to be done for us to reduce and stop it.
What do you think needs to happen to improve the implementation of these measures and to ensure that corruption and money laundering is identified earlier and then successfully prosecuted? What do you think on the ground needs to happen?
Well, that's a difficult question, and you referred to the Madlanga Commission and inquiry in Parliament. We can see that we have huge challenges in our law enforcement system, in the police, right at the leadership level. So we're going to have to make sure that we have a police force and prosecutors who really act without fear, favor, or prejudice, that people focus on doing their job, that they don't get intimidated by any politically influential persons not to investigate. We've got to make sure that our investigative processes are not compromised. So the challenge is going to be, how do we ensure that we have more effective preventive systems? How do we ensure that we have investigative systems which have credibility and aren't compromised? And similarly, how do we have a prosecution system that works more effectively? I don't think that there's much more to do beyond also modernizing and using data and technology to begin to deal with these financial crimes. and getting the capability, the forensic capability, understanding digital evidence. So it's about modernizing our system of monitoring and enforcement that I think we're going to have to look at. So in one sense, it's not surprising. It's actually very boring, but really boring as it may be, we need to get down to doing the basics and making sure that we are implementing in the way that the people of our country expect.
Just lastly, the interventions have increased the administrative burden on virtually every single South African and business. And whenever you do a transaction, a financial transaction, an investment or a transfer, you need to prove the origin of the funds. You need to show where it came from. You need to give proof of beneficial ownership. And there are also specific regulations for certain industries like lawyers and car dealers and estate agents, etc. And it makes it more difficult to do business. There is more bureaucracy. Is this the new norm? Should people get used to this?
Well, to some extent, yes, because it's like what people say, you get free card, right? But if you use technology, you can do it more seamlessly. But, whilst you were grey listed, many countries use what they put us under enhanced due diligence. So each transaction, not each and every, but many transactions would have attracted more due diligence, and therefore it would take longer, it would be more costly, and so on. To the extent that we've deemed to have fixed up our system and our authorities are working, we can actually lower the costs of correspondent banking, and if people have more faith in our system that is not prone to money laundering and dirty money, then we will reduce the cost, and that will have a good impact on trade and on investment. But it's going to take, as you know, in the financial world, it's all about trust. And building trust does take a bit of time. And so it may take us, 6 to 12 months or perhaps 2 years, where we'll see the beneficial effects. And we need to just continue to demonstrate improvements.
Ismail, baie dankie vir jou tyd vanaand. Dit was Ismail Mamoniat. Hy is 'n tegniese raadgewer tot die Nasionale Tesourie en hy is die hoof van die span wat Suid-Afrika van hierdie gryslys gekry het. Nou op die lyn is Hendrik de Tooy. Hy is die uitvoerende hoof van 91. Hy gesels met ons uit Saudi-Arabië uit. Hendrik, baie welkom by die program. Wat is jou reaksie?
Goeiemôre Ryk en luisteraars. Dit is net vir my wonderlik om te luister na and I gaan dit in Engels sê, because Ismail Mamoniat is one of the great civil servants of South Africa. He helped build the treasury. He's a man of very high integrity, and I just want to salute him with what he's achieved. Maar ek hoop hy verstaan dit. Ek dink hy praat seker ook Afrikaans, maar ek het hom net seker gemaak. Maar hy is, ons het meer mense soos hy nodig. En ons het te min mense wat 'n job ordentlik kan doen. En ek dink hulle het die owerhede het 'n baie goeie hulle goed van hulle taak gekwyt, maar ek is vanaand, of om die waarheid sê, die Vrydag toe die nuus uitgekom het, ek het baie lanklaas 'n flikvlak probeer doen, maar ek het dit gedoen. Want ons kliënte het regtig swaar gekry die laaste tyd met die sogenaamde enhanced due diligence, wat deur Europa moes kontrakteer en mense wat hulle geld wil uitkry, wat ons baie lank ken, se prosesse is geweldig vertraag as gevolg van hierdie, en het ons eintlik ons 91 en ander Suid-Afrikaanse bate en welvaartsbestuurders ons was eintlik agter die buitelandse kompetisie, want ons is anders behandel deur sekere stelsels, en ek dink dit kan nou ten minste verbeter, maar Suid-Afrika is baie ver van reg. Madlanga, ek wonder of hulle die toetse sou deurkom het as Madlanga vroeër uitgekom het, en ons sien hoe ons vervolgingsgesag en ons wet en orde gesag verval het, en ek dink ons het verskriklik baie werk om te doen nog, om te bly op aan die regte kant van kapitaal en van regulasie.
Ja, kyk, ek dink die regulasie is goed gekeer, so op papier gaan dit baie goed met ons prosesse, maar in die praktyk dis waar die probleem is, en ek dink dis ook waar waar die uiteindelik die sukses daarvan gemeet word, kan ons hierdie korrupsie hokslaan. Dit is so eenvoudig soos dit en volgens hom nie gou nie.
Ek dink my waar ek positief is dat ons hierdie goed aan die blootstel is ons is besig om grootskaal en baie dapper joernaliste soos Jeff Weeks en ander is besig om hierdie werk te doen. My versoek is aan Suid-Afrikaners waar julle kan help en waar daar finansies gegee kan word vir sulke ondersoeke, doen dit. Die politieke wil is op die ou die ding wat ons nie het nie. Hier het ons gister gehoor dat Fikile Mbalula het op 'n vliegtuig van iemand wat waarskynlik vir SARS ontsettende groot bedrag geld skuld en met ander woorde die staat se inkomste drasties verminder deur essensieel deel van 'n sigaretmafia is dat hy op 'n vliegtuig reis saam met so ou en hy is sogenaamde eerlike kant van die regering. So ek dink dis tyd dat ons baie reguit praat oor hierdie goed. Dis tyd dat ons hierdie goed uitwys en dis tyd dat ons die nie alleen privaat nie, maar ook blootstellings en getuienis uitbring om op die ou end hierdie mense aan die pen te laat ry, want ons kan eenvoudig nie so aangaan nie. En die mense wat swaar kry is nie die ryk mense nie, wat geld enige plek in die wêreld kan belê nie. Dis die arme mense in ons land. En hulle is hoofsaaklik swart en hulle is hoofsaaklik ondersteuners van die regerende party. So ek hoop dat mense in die regerende party en mense soos Ismail is ondersteuners van daai party dit hoor en ook hard praat maar dit moet 'n nasionale projek word en die verdere projek is etiese besigheid. Ek dink baie mense dink jy noem iemand 'n besigheidsman wat effektief by die staat steel en dan sê jy besigheidsman so en so het 'n motor van 52 miljoen. Daai ou is nie 'n besigheidsman nie, hy het nog nooit besigheid gedoen nie. Hy het gesteel. En ons moet dit reguit sê.
Ja, en kyk natuurlik het Suid-Afrika nie 'n monopolie op probleme nie en veral nie ook hierdie probleme nie. Maar as mens nou 'n bietjie meer kyk na Suid-Afrika se posisie in die wêreld en die verandering wat hierdie meebring dat ons nou van hierdie gryslys af is, want ja, daar is vordering wat gemaak word teen korrupsie, hierdie is 'n goeie voorbeeld daarvan. Is die vordering genoeg? Nee. Maar uit 'n buitelander se oë en van Suid-Afrikaners wat in die buiteland wil belê, wat beteken die feit dat ons nou van daai lys af is?
Ek dink die praktiese implikasie is meer vir mense wat deur die bankstelsel of deur die sogenaamde FICA proses internasionaal moet gaan. Dit gaan baie makliker wees, maar ek dink 'n gryslys land in 'n raadsaal lei tot vrae en mense sal sê kom ons belê liewer in die plek waar ek byvoorbeeld nou is, die Midde-Ooste wat 'n absolute bloeitydperk beleef omdat hulle baie effektief hulle boodskap dat hulle oop is vir besigheid en dat hulle nie alleen olie-uitvoerders is nie, maar dat hulle ander besighede wil aantrek om hier te vestig. Ons het byvoorbeeld 91 het 'n kantoor in Saudi-Arabië oopgemaak. Ons het vandag gaan kyk na nuwe en groter kantoorspasie vir ons, want ons wil meer mense hier aanstel. En die regering is oop daarvoor en die boodskap is baie duidelik. Suid-Afrika moet op die voorvoet beweeg. Hy moet eers natuurlik die binnendinge regmaak. Jy moet 'n polisie mag hê wat werk. Jy moet veiligheid hê. Jy moet 'n staat hê wat fiskaal die geld kan invorder wat hom toekom en dit nie mors nie. En jy moet gesondheidsdienste en so voort hê wat werk. Maar as ons daar is, moet ons 'n positiewe boodskap hê van waar in die wêreld gaan ons kompeteer en hoe gaan ons kompeteer. En ek dink hoe gou ons kan by daardie gesprek kom eerder as partypolitieke punte van mekaar af wen. En ek dink dit is in alle Suid-Afrikaners se belang en ek kom terug na wat ek al 'n jaar of 2 terug gesê het. Ons hoort 'n amnestie of iets soortgelyks te kry, 'n lyn onder hierdie ding te trek en dan vir jong mense te leer dat dit gaan oor harde werk en insette en kompeterend wees en nie wie jy ken om 'n sogenaamde voordeel te verkry van die staat of die plaaslike regering. Kyk in die stand van ons munisipaliteite. Ek meen, dit is skokkend.
Hendrik, ons sluit daarmee los. Baie dankie vir jou tyd. Dit was Hendrik de Tooy, hy is die uitvoerende hoof van 91. Skalk, wat is jou reaksie? Vinnig.
Nee, ek dink dit is skitterend vir ons. Weet dat 'n paar dinge gebeur, ons is na rommelstatus gewees daar in 2020-21. Dis die volgende hekkie wat ons moet kry, maar hierdie is 'n reuse hekkie wat ons oor is en ek stem 100% saam met Hendrik. Ek dink dit is verseker, dit is ons almal se taak. Ons moet hierdie ouens verantwoordelik hou en mense moet nou net gaan van krag tot krag.
Laat Portfolium se kundige finansiële adviseurs jou bystaan om 'n beter uitkoms vir aftrede te verseker. SMS die woord rand na 37522 teen R1 en Portfolium skakel jou terug.
Is jy 55 jaar of ouer en 'n lid van die GEPF? Goeie nuus is jy kan nou op 'n vroeë aftrede gaan sonder enige penalisasies en moontlike addisionele vergoeding kry volgens jou diensjare. Vrae soos, hoe benut ek my volle belastingvrye voordeel uniek tot die GEPF met aftrede? Wat gebeur met my mediese subsidie as ek sou vroeër aftree? Hoe betaal ek so min as moontlik belasting gedurende my aftrede en kan ek dit werklik bekostig? Jy het net tyd tot 30 November om hierdie lewensveranderende besluit te neem. Stuur 'n SMS teen R1 met die woord rand na 37522 of rig 'n e-pos aan info@portfolium.co.za. Niemand verstaan die GEPF beter as Portfolium nie. Laat ons jou bystaan om 'n ingeligte besluit te neem.